Kim Kardashian West breaking her silence, speaking out for the first time about her effort to secure the freedom of this woman caught in what was obviously one of the great joyful moments of her life. Alice Marie Johnson rushing into the arms of loved ones freed yesterday after 21 years in federal prison, sentenced to life on drug charges. Kardashian West lobbied the president on Ms. Johnson's behalf, and yesterday he commuted her sentence, citing her good behavior and rehabilitation, none of which would be especially controversial, except that it's part of a series of pardons and proposed pardons by the president that is raising questions on a number of fronts, including just exactly how the president is using one of the few absolute powers the presidents share with kings. The current Time magazine cover story raising the specter of an imperial presidency, something we'll touch on later. First, though, the case of Alice Marie Johnson and Kim Kardashian West, who spoke exclusively late today with CNN's Van Jones. Van, you just finished an interview with Kim Kardashian West. What did she have to say?
Hey, listen, it was a phenomenal interview. She was super emotional about this victory. You know, she got this woman her freedom, and she was passionate about the cause. She made a little bit of news. She said Donald Trump called her directly, personally, on her cell phone, and then she got a chance to call Alice Johnson in prison and let her know that she was going to be coming home. And she also responded to a lot of the criticisms and skepticism. No good deed goes unpunished, but she had some good stuff to say for herself. The meeting with President Trump, now that's a whole other level.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, when I initially called Ivanka, I said I would love a meeting with your dad. I said that from the start. And then that took about 6 or 7 months to get. And so once we got the file really strong, we were able to plan a meeting. And there was the Prison Reform Summit that I know you were at. And so I was going to go to that. And my meeting was scheduled the day before that. And then things were changing, schedules were changing. And so they had rescheduled the meeting, and it happened to be on Alice's birthday. And that was the date they picked. And so I was like, okay, this is just all aligned. The stars are all in our favor today. I just feel that this is the right day to do it. And
so you go in.
We go in.
That's crazy. You got to know,
Yeah.
for normal people, Kim Kardashian going into the Trump White House,
the West Wing,
the Oval Office.
Yeah, I have to say, I never get starstruck. I was starstruck over the Oval Office.
Yeah. President Trump actually called you.
Yes.
So you're sitting there, the phone rings, and what does it come up? It says Donald Trump, or what happens?
No, it says unknown. And so I remember I was on the phone with my husband, and I said, wait, babe, I got to call you back. And it was a secretary on the line that said she had the president on the phone. And I knew it had to be some news. Hopefully, I was always really hopeful. And I had been in communication with Jared, so I was feeling things were looking really positive. But that week after meeting, you're just literally on pins and needles waiting to hear what's going on. So, yeah, he called my cell phone.
And what did he say?
He said that he's really investigated this case and spoke to her warden, spoke to just everyone, and everyone had a unanimous, from the people that he reached out to, unanimous feeling of Alice, that she will live a great life, and she will, that she has done her time, has been such a model person in prison. She's never had any infractions on, behavior or anything.
It's almost impossible in prison, by the way. So
yeah, I mean, and she became an ordained minister. She got so many degrees. She just, knowing that she's never going to get out, but she is still so amazing and is working on herself the whole time she's there. I think just he felt her heart, and he explained that to me. And I was just, when he said he has the papers in front of him and he's signing it, I just, my heart was so full.
I'm just going to throw them at you. You tell me who's right and who's wrong. Trump is using you as a political pawn. So now you're sort of, you've endorsed him in a way. You've kind of given him legitimacy. You might be in a campaign video. He used you.
I think Kanye's already given him legitimacy, so I don't, in that way. So I was working on this before, so I don't, I don't think I would be used, and at the end of the day, he heard me out. We got the job done. So I don't think, what could he really use me for?
I wonder what does this say to you about how the president is making decisions about whom he pardons, who he doesn't?
Well, I think that he is taking a very unusual approach to pardons. President Obama pardoned, more than 1,000 people in similar situations, but he had a big process for it. Donald Trump seems to be going a little bit more sporadically in some ways. However, if you listen to what Kim Kardashian West said, being able to make the case that this person had changed their lives, that they had served a lot of time, and they could go home and be a good, productive member of society, seemed to land strongly with President Trump. And so I think it's a different way of doing business. But if you are a family member of Miss Alice, you're pretty happy with his decision making this week.
I'm going to be speaking with Raymond Santana, obviously a member of the Central Park Five, coming up next. I'm just wondering, how do you make sense of a president who can show mercy to someone like Alice Marie Johnson, but still to this day has yet to apologize or admit he was wrong about the horrible things he said about the Central Park Five?
It's one of the most baffling things, and I think people are trying to figure out how to square the circle, how to make sense of stuff. It's very, very tough. What I would say is this. I am glad President Trump did this. I hope he does more things like this. I hope he becomes more systematic in doing it. At the same time, it doesn't take away from some of the other bad stuff. If you got a kid and they get 9 questions wrong and they get 1 question right, you're glad they got the question right, but they still don't get an A. Donald Trump's got a long way to go to get to A when it comes to these issues around justice.
Van Jones, thanks very much. Raymond Santana, in his case, he gave Kim Kardashian West a shout out today. Just to remind you, in 1990, Santana and 4 others were convicted in the beating and rape of a jogger in New York Central Park. After serving years in prison, he and the rest of what became known as the Central Park Five were finally exonerated. Someone else committed the crime. DNA evidence confirmed it. Today, Raymond Santana tweeted, "I gave Kim Kardashian a lot of flack about speaking on prison reform, but when I found out she went to champion on Alice Johnson's behalf, I had to eat my words. Apologies to Kim Kardashian. Recognize your work. Salute." And in that one tweet, Raymond Santana was far more generous to Kim Kardashian West than the president ever was to him or the other members of the Central Park Five. In the weeks after the attack, Citizen Trump bought these full-page newspaper ads calling for return of the death penalty. When the 5 were exonerated, he refused to accept it, and when the city agreed to a $41 million settlement with them, he wrote an opinion piece calling it a disgrace. He has, to this day, never apologized to Raymond Santana, who joins us, or any member of the Central Park Five. Raymond, I want to ask you the same question that I just asked Van Jones. How do you make sense of the president who can show mercy to someone like Alice Marie Johnson, but still to this day hasn't apologized to you or the other 4 of the Central Park Five?
Anderson, it's when I first heard about it, I really thought that it was a good thing. I thought that it was a great thing that somebody was finally pardoned, that he had taken a step to do something, for Alice Johnson. But there's a part of me that, because of this man's track record, because we know that he's deceitful, he has lied several times, he has fabricated things, it's very hard to believe that it comes from a genuine place. Then we find out that Kim Kardashian, went and spoke to him and consulted with him, and she swayed him to do this. So it just proves that at the end of the day, he's still full of lies and he's still full of trickery, and that it hurts because here we are, right, in the pardon of Scooter Libby, right, and I quote, Donald said that he didn't know the man personally, but he spoke to several people, and several people said that this guy was done unjustly, and that's what he went by. And in our case, we had DNA evidence. We had the prosecutor, right? We had several people who championed for us, and none of that matter to him, and he didn't care. We were still guilty in his eyes. So at the end of the day, this move doesn't look like it comes from a good place. We can't trust him. You know, you can't just dangle Kim Kardashian and Kanye West in our face and say, look, I have a change of heart and I deserve a pass.
We heard from Kim Kardashian a bit ago, the fact that there's been a celebrity component to some of these pardons, whether it's with her or Sylvester Stallone and Jack Johnson. Does that matter in your mind? Or at the end of the day, I mean, if a commutation or pardon happens, is that what counts most?
I think that, you know, it does matter. In our case, you know, you had Ken Burns who did his research and seek the truth and seek justice, and he knew that we were innocent, so he stepped up and decided to do something for it. You know, and I think that it weighs a lot because our celebrities, this is what they're supposed to do. They have this major influence. They have a duty to the public, those people who support them. They're supposed to champion for a cause like this.
I just want to read a portion of the full-page ad that then Donald Trump took out in the Daily News. It was back in 1989 about you and your co-defendants. He wrote, quote, "Criminals must be told that their civil liberties end when an attack on our safety begins." Does that at all sound like the same man who's pardoning people who have a criminal record now?
Well, I mean, it might look like that there's a change, but I don't want to give him that pass just yet. He needs to do more for our community. We have a lot of issues. If you want to pardon people, speak to the Innocence Project in New York City. I'm sure they have a whole list of people that deserve pardons. You know, I mean, there's other issues that we have to deal with before we can trust Donald Trump. I mean, there's police brutality, mass incarceration, you know, job unemployment, education funding for programs that he has cut in the past. Like, he has to do all these things and make it right before we can finally trust this man.
The president has shown compassion by pardoning someone like Alice Marie Johnson or commuting a sentence. Do you have any kind of expectation that he may also show compassion and admit he was wrong and apologize to you and the other four, or at least admit he was wrong?
I mean, if he does, it's a first step in the right direction. But before I believe him, he has to do a whole lot more for our community.